Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 15, Week 6 recap and power rankings. We got some major shifts now, some teams clinching playoffs, a big shift at the top. I'm your host, IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
Let's get right into some trades and transactions. Running out of time to make those moves to improve your team. Booper saw that and made some big moves here for sure. Out are Horse, Mudsdale, maybe Horse, Substrika, and the Charizard as well with Terra. And in come the Lycanroc Midnight form, the Oinkologne taking Terra Captain, and probably most importantly there, Raikou. And along with that, too, we get the change of Terra Captain over to Tatsugiri as well. So Charizard's kind of split up there between the Oinkologne and Tatsugiri. I guess I'll defer this one to you to start, Steve. I know you've used Raikou in the past. We've had some mixed opinions, thoughts on it. I am a big Mudsdale fan. It's a shame it didn't really end up working the team comp, but Raikou is definitely the big piece here coming in.
Yeah, I am a fan of Raikou. I know people have talked about it, and the season I used it, I certainly didn't do well with it. So it has not a really great history in the league. Reasonable enough, good speed tier. Always nice to have that electric type. Um, as mentioned, this is kind of a consolidation to just move up into a higher tier. I don't believe had barely brought Mudsdale or not at all, and didn't bring Charizard as a Strike either. So perhaps just swapping up to Mons, the Boopers are more comfortable with, including consolidating some points, getting that just higher tier Raikou, which will hopefully be able to put in more work for them along with the rest of their top tiers. Um, Reasonable enough. The low tier pickups here. Lycanroc Dusk is just so disappointing as it doesn't get the priority option, just has to rely on Sucker Punch. Although, for a bottom tier, it is reasonable. And Oinkologne, 1 point here because there's two forms and you can adjust your stats a little bit based on that. But we're not expecting much there. It is a Mon that can hit reasonably well as a normal type, but that's not a high bar to hit. So reasonable choices if the Raikou fits what the Boopers are looking for more.
Yeah, Oinkologne hopes it can live up to the standards that things like Komala and Gumshoes have set in the league, as well as Furret. Shout out to Furret getting a KO there too. Yeah, Raikou, I think just kind of continuing the trend, getting some more pivoting moves around into the Boopers' big hitters, which have definitely shown up as of late there. So we'll see if that ends up working out. Also, a nice little steel resist, maybe a couple other typings there as well to help out. Next up, Akron Agron's making some big changes here as well. Out are some of their favored picks for sure. Latias definitely stands out there. Doxbun been coming quite a bit. What a good boy. Hitmontop and Cacturn out as well. Cacturn, pretty important player in that first match of the season there, which was insane. And coming in, Scizor definitely headlines this, but maybe you're looking more at the Terra Captain Dreadnought coming in, which is definitely a big deal. Also, the Tauros, just the combat breed, just regular fighting form, and the Haunter as well to round things out there. And once again, a little bit of a Terra Captain change with Tauros coming in, Latias coming out, Dreadnought coming in for the Terras. I left Joey with a few more points, so Tauros will take over Terra Captaincy from the Gumshoes. Steve, I will let you take over again here. You've already faced the Agrons. You have a bit of an idea of what you're looking at with their team. What do you see with especially the Scizor and Dreadnought coming in here?
Yeah, I am very familiar with why this trade was made. I know after my match against the Agrons and then after their match the previous week against the Bowlers, both of us really exploited the fact that they didn't really have physical attackers we were worried about. We mentioned the Gumshoe, and they have, many of the mons they actually traded away with the Hitmontop, the Doxbun, the Cacturn. But that was really it in terms of physical attackers. I guess body press on Archaludon. They really were leaning very much into that special offense, which really allowed, again, when T-billing against them, to really emphasize assault vests and then special bulk. And there were some frustrating moments, I know, specifically in my match with them that the Agrons had, where they just couldn't get through things because I invested so heavily one way. So they really wanted to switch that up. It was a little bit questionable when I first saw it, as they traded away 3 of their physical attackers. But the main point here is swapping those for higher tier physical attackers, with the points getting by dropping the high tier Latias, which it does suck for Latias to go. But I think some of these mons really make up for it. Scizor is, of course, great and does add that physical attacker that the opposing team has to worry about. And very notably, especially for their rain team, Terra Captain Dreadnought is going to be massive. Just emphasizing that rain even more. They already had kind of the synergy with Archaludon and the boosted attacks from Bundle, but now they also have a Swift Swim Sweeper, as well as, maybe it doesn't rely on that and just uses Shell Smash and goes there. But either way, the Dreadnought, it can be super threatening and then has Terra to exploit that. Um, Definitely focusing on the physical side, so getting a lot more physical offense the opponent has to respect, and therefore, won't just be running 3 Assault Vest, max HP, max special defense, as some of their past opponents have.
Yeah, glad you brought up the rain aspect there. That is a big part of the team there. Scizor also definitely benefits from its one weakness being covered a little bit there in the rain. Just even more pivoting around. There's something else that it's a good payoff to go into, not just into our Chaladon. Kind of a neat look here for a rain team. Not too heavily invested in all these Switzermers. Dreadnought can function in and out because of the Terra Scizor, of course. So it's starting to come together a little bit for the Agrons. We'll see if that brings them success to try and get back into things. Interest how the Tauros will do as well. And finally, we did warn you, Calgary trading the Terra Captaincy back over to Dragapult. Yeah, it's back. We already talked about this once, but Dragapult with Terra, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was it. I believe I mentioned it last week that they started looking at things more matchup to matchup. They were happy with the team, and looking at a certain matchup, were like, hey, I kind of want Glamora to be the Terra captain here. That matchup has passed. They swap it back to Dragapult so that it can proceed to do what they want. And with the trade deadline approaching, it likely won't be switching for another week, as they don't have 2 more weeks to switch it back. So here it is, Dragapult likely staying. No spoilers for next week, but it's staying, and will be their go-to Terra captain for the rest of the season.
That says it all, and we're going to move along to the recap for Week 6, and we are starting off with a match we all anticipated to be a banger. The Corviknight Clobbers and Wooper Boopers, each fresh off their first loss of the season. But oh no, that's a 9-turd battle, and when you see the Stellar Enamours at +6/+6, I think you know as well as I how the Boopers achieved the 6-0. Turn 1, Sneasler forces out Overquill, just U-turn straight into Enamours on the Great Tusk. Stellar Terror Blast doing 50 to Primarina means the next one KOs. Knucklestax hangs on and gets up the Salt Cure, swaps into Overquill, which gets KO'd. Knucklestax, Salazzle, Wellspring, Great Tusk, they all go down to the Scarf Enam Terra Blast. Oh jeez, that's the win for the Boopers, I guess. Next match, it's a good one between the Summit County Psyducks and Boulder. Boulder seemingly going in opposite directions, but this match, which came down to a couple of key turns, went the way of the Psyducks. They're the ones climbing up to 500, with the Boulders in serious trouble now. And that's a great formula to make this our match of the week, hosted by Michael of the Route 1 Burbs on this channel. Check it out, see what happens when Volcarona actually does something, and what Sazbo will be kicking himself over in the next several days. Meanwhile, Terrifier Heatwave look back on track with their win over the Seattle Steamrollers. Turn 1, the Heatwave easily trade rocks for Clef getting parried by Slowking. It means they get the Solar Baton Pass into Deoxys to check the Chili Cinchino and get up spikes on a Qinglu. Nice follow-up taunt, stopping further hazards off from the other side. Zarude takes half from Ruination, Power Whip doing almost half back, and then get another half off, with Jungle Healing helping out there. A little healthier again as Grimmsnarl gets up Reflect, out to Bellybolt, Parting Shot out as Cinchino gets hit by the Toxic, but it's just there to clean up the hazards. Out into Yanma, that's just going to get Endure. That means Cinchino does go down to Toxic, as it cannot KO, but Yanma is indeed revenged by the Inteleon flip turn. Kyurem D-Dance up in front of Clefable. Is this it? Icicle Spear hits once, twice, thrice. Only 4 times. Clefable lives on 3%. The second Moonblast KOs. That is huge punish for not going Terra Ice there a couple different ways. At least Inteleon picks up the revenge KO. Mienshao in, U-turn out of Slowking back to Zarude. Power Whip, the big damage for the KO. Qinglu taking big damage too. It can only Whirlwind as Mienshao picks it up with close combat. Spadef not low enough for Inteleon's Ice Beam. CC picks up that too. With only Grimmsnarl up, it's just a matter of time. Bellybolt lays down a Toxic. Pivot into Deoxys, who can finish it off. Good win for the Heatwave. Next match, here's another good one. We're going to take a look at the Close Combat Club, steadily rising through their tough schedule. Here taking a big win against the Cincinnati Incineroar 5-0. Turn 1, Bleakwind Storm doing half the Deoxys defense, knockoff back, removing those choice spectacles. Just a U-turn out on Stealth Rocks. Iron Tread's able to remove them in exchange for the Assault Vest going off, and EQ doing more damage to it on the teleport. Tropius in, gets up Leech Seed as it tanks an Ice Spinner. Some more switching around, allows Excadrill to eat a Bleakwind Storm from Tornadus. Follows up with Heatwave though. Miss. Crazy. I would never miss a 90% accurate move, as the Rock Blast follow-up hits 4 times to Oko Torn. Brutal. But Iron Treads in, EQ KOs Keldeo going to Calm Mind up at Annihilate, the possible answer. Shadow Claw doing well over half. Darkrai, the response, taking a bunch from another crit, but in comes Enamorous Theory and Deoxys to do the switch. Calm Mind up, then Calm Mind again on Teleport, out into Tropius Light on another Leech Seed, but it's taking so much from Draining Kiss and Enam just healing up, plus another Calm Mind on the easy Protector Read. Substitute, Draining Kiss just heals so much even with Terra Poison. Air Slash doing nothing back, Earth Power brings it down. Oh no, I see what's happening. Darkrai doesn't get the poison from Sludge Bomb and goes down. Heat Crash from Gouging Fire does almost half, but it's down 2. Hydro Pump Keldeo doesn't do much and goes down, and of course Deoxys Defense isn't the answer either. Enamorous coming in and going to town on the Incineroar. Next up, it's the battle between co-hosts, the back-to-back finals, maybe previewing a third. We weren't so bold this time around, but hey, we're still doing all right, and one of us a little better. My Buffalo Bouffalant getting their 4th win after a good match of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets. Turn 1, Petrarant tanks the Zen Headbutt from Cinderace surprisingly well, but in comes Empoleon. Both of us kind of chipping each other and healing up, with me getting up rocks too, but Blastoise is in. Empoleon stays in on flip turn, Petrarant back in, Blastoise back in again, and this time I go into Typhlosion to spin block, and then double out into Rotom on the flip turn. Boots Chen Pao in, Terra Blast Fairy with a Scarf on the side. Chen Pao is gone. Iron Moth, the revenge option, Typhlosion sees the choice specs, and that's probably why Overheat misses. First miss of the season against the Bouffalant. Shout out. They'll trade damage with Overheat and Shadow Ball, but with the Scarf, that means Steve goes into Blastoise to tank 2 and flip turn out into Necrozma for the KO. With Lefty's reveal, how about Rotom in again to trick it? A Scarf on Moonlight, which is huge. Lando also taking half from Terra Blast. Good U-turn out on Iron Hands into Blastoise, who takes 13% from rocks, barely in range to go down to Hazard, so no spin. May as well go Iron Moth now, I suppose. Overheat doing massive damage. Volt Switch finishes that off. Cinder and Lando here at neutral, but that's yet another Scarf. Cinder clicks Pyro Ball to miss. Yeah, that's classic. It goes down to the Landro EQ, but that means Rotom comes in. A T-Bolt does massive damage to Petrarant with a crit. Another KOing after barely taking Malignant Chain. Almost done from here. Gravity out from Necrozma on Volt Switch. Empoleon KOs Lando. And it's just a matter of stalling out Gravity, sacking Rotom in the process, meaning Necro is locked into Earth Power. Latios can take the final KO. Another big win is the Bouffalant are looking back on track. Next up, we love to rag on the Akron Agrons here, and with the Newport Noctills in town, that seemed like an inevitable outcome to this segment. But here's a contender for biggest upset of the season. The Agrons adding a high to their roller coaster season with a huge win over the previously undefeated Noctills, a 4-0. And that started off with the biggest underdog. Ogerpon chunks Gumshoe's turn 1, but Banded Double Edge claims the KO. But here's Greninja Waterfall triggering the early Battle Bond. Freeze Dry Bundle. Yachi Berry triggers on Greninja, and Dark Pulse back. 99% bundle lives. What an insane turn. Tauros in for the Intimidate. Tanks a Water Shuriken, but not a Hydro Pump. 3 water moves. Is it over? Hydro Pump misses the Sandy Shocks. Volt Switch KOs. Flip turn chip on Tinkaton as it gets up rocks. Sandy Shocks also getting up rocks, and Volt Switch is out on Farigiraf, who sets up Future Sight. Salamence in on Scissor, U-turn into Cryo, Rapid Spin on Tinkaton with the Terra Steel. Terra Blast doesn't do much of anything but recover up on Tinkaton. It's looking like a stalemate between the two now Steel types. A nice Encore on Rapid Spin. They're both going to swap out into neutral into Regieleki and Sandy Shocks. Alecki takes the chance to Rapid Spin, not going to Terra into water, and Sandy Shocks gets the KO. Wait, where's your Shocks answer now? Power Gem KO Salamence. Farigiraf can hardly touch Shocks. Same with Tinkaton, who takes over half from Earth Power twice to go down with just the Giraffe left. Volt Switch into Scissor U-turn can't KO thanks to the Terra Steel, but now Earth Power is super effective. A huge performance from the Shocks as the Agrons walk with this one. The Noctills, the last undefeated team, goes down. Next match, another absolute banger here. It's the Calgary Corviknight and the Route 1 Burbs. Fellow space friends squaring off, but it's Calgary who grabbed the W this time in a tight 2-0 win. Turn 1, Balloon Glamorous and Energy Ball doesn't go into Gastro, but Muck instead, and that's okay because a Corrosion Toxic goes in next, and another Toxic into Hydreigon the turn after. Florges eating the next hit, Glamora in on Muck next, who's chipping down Glamora a bit at a time, and then a nasty Sludge Wave doing half to Hydreigon on its switch in, but Florges is just the answer yet again. Florges also tanks anything from Gastro, wishing safely into Barraskewda, but Gastro eating up the CC as well. We're just going to be more cycling around than trying to break through. Florges gets up a light screen and Wish, but in front of Muck, Gunk Shot, goes from full. That is some power, but although Brick Break removes light screen, Wish heals up Glamora, and Muck does go down. Another Corrosion Toxic, this one into Fortress, paralyzed in return, but Michael found a chance to get an Iron Valiant, taking only 40, and Glamora goes down. More switching around. Azelf in on Lycanroc, U-turn does about half, it goes into Volcanion. Stone Edge, miss. Oh, stays in. Another Stone Edge. Miss again. And Will-O-Wisp in return. Brutal sequence there for sure. At least Gastro is not getting poisoned by Sludge Bomb, and it seems like it's tanking everything. Azelf chipping itself down with Life Orb as Gastro recovers up. Barraskewda takes 2/3 from Earth Power. Okay, can Gastro clutch this? But a good switch gives Azelf a chance. Fire Punch into Fortress. Gets a KO. That's pretty nice at least. That brings in Iron Valiant, but the Volcanion only taking a quarter from Terra Fairy Moonblast. Sheesh, back to Gastro as we're fishing for the poison. 3 Sludge Bombs, no poison, which gives Gastro a chance to recover up and Earth Power. Burb suddenly firmly in the driver's seat. As off Psycho Cut, crit does 80%, but a good recover that turn from Gastro. This looks close, and now U-turn out into Dragapult, who also can only U-turn out after terroring into ground. That means Azoff has to eat an Ice Beam. Psycho Cut only doing half as Gastro recovers again. Azoff only has 2 more attacks left before Lorb claims its life. The Burb's helping out a bit though, as Hydreigon eats a Psycho Cut and then is outsped by U-turn to go down. Gastro versus Dragapult. It was chipped down just enough. Draco Meteor, down goes Gastro. Finally, 3 HP is all he needs to sack the Azelf to Valiant. Terra Blast ground KOs Valiant after tanking a Moonblast, and then barely tanking a crit Accelerock 2 to KO Lycanroc. Incredibly close match with all sorts of possible tipping points, but Calgary emerges the victor. And finally, the moment we've all been waiting for all season, it's the Mareep, Flaffy, Vulpix, Sunkern week from the Kanto Kingler. Somehow not enough to defeat the Chill and Chi-Yus. Early rocks from Sandaconda's Nice and Glow King are sitting in front of Pex, prompting the goat, sheep, maybe Mareep, out into Flaffy on Sandaconda. Focus Punch, okay, not enough as Sandaconda has EQ, of course, out into Vulpix, back into Mareep to sack, and then Solar Power, Sunkern, it's time. Glare, full power, full para there, and then another full para on the Rotom. We're getting robbed of the Sunkern supremacy. It gets off a Leech Seed into Glow King. Endeavor brings it low, okay. Terra Steel Sunkern, Vulpix in, sack to Volt Switch plus Future Sight. Ceaseless Edge then grabbing the Hoopa KO, doing most of Pex's health, but a good Sludge Wave and Poison means it isn't a 6-0. Shout out, but Rotom can just clean up. Volt Switch KOs Sunkern, Sandaconda EQ to finish Pex. Another win for the Chi-Yus. And finally, still waiting on the Clods versus the Miltank. Spraying Tony can find some peace with the rubbish life is throwing at him. That's what's happened in week 6. You're not ready for these power rankings. We got a big shake-up here. We put the Wooper Boopers at number 1, which we'll get to in a moment. That slides the Newport Noctilles down to 2. Calgary Corviknights with their big win, actually at 3 now. Terrifier Heatwave 4. Bouffalant up to 5. Corviknight Clobbers at 6. Chillin' Chi-Yus at 7. And we are rounding it out with the Route 1 Burbs at 8. And we'll talk about the bottom there as well in just a little bit too, possibly more with the standings. But Steve, the big thing is up at the top, Noctilles lose 1 game and they're not the best team anymore. What are we doing there? We're just generating some clicks here. Shout out to everyone who watches. But the top 4 are all 5-1. We decided to move the Boopers ahead after their big win. What say you?
Yeah, right now we really considered a couple groupings here, specifically the top 3. Although after some brief discussion and kind of Calgary's schedule so far has kind of been the easiest and kind of the least impressive outside of that week 1 loss. So they were the easy 3. But 1 and 2, the big decision here really comes down to, after reviewing the Noctowl schedule and thinking about how everyone's done this season, they really don't have anything impressive. They've been dominant and they have felt dominant, but a single loss kind of opened the cracks. Some of their wins are against teams that weren't even trying or teams that, aren't performing well. Looking historically, their most impressive win was against myself and the Wobbuffets, who not even on this list. I'm having, a 3-3 season at the moment. Outside of that, they beat the Chi-Yus. They were able to stop the Dragonite, able to make a good game plan for that. But they really don't have any matchups against any of the other teams who are, really in consideration. And they've now have a loss to the Agrons, who, we've kind of discounted before they had this big win here. Meanwhile, on the other end, the Boopers with moving up, getting a win against the Clobbers this week, a team that's at least in the positive against teams that are in the hunt. They've had close matches against the Heatwave and Bouffalant, winning one of those, losing one of those. Overall, it just seems like they've had a more difficult schedule to end up at the 5-1, and they've been pushing where they needed to and picking up wins. They've had a lot closer wins, but just based on the adversity faced so far at the schedule and ending up at the same record here, especially after 6 weeks, we felt that was enough to give them the edge.
Preseason ranked well outside the top 8. Shout out to them for climbing up to number 1 in our power rankings. Also shout out the Corviknights' 5-game winning streak currently, but still only good enough for 3rd right now. And you already know the Noctilles are going to get back on track. Steve, our next grouping was 4-5. It was one of the only ones that we really agreed upon before going any further there. Heatwave 5-1, Bouffalant 4-2. Both looking pretty solid. Bouffalant's losing to the Heatwave, of course. Heatwave with their 1 loss to team above them as well. Nothing too crazy here, I believe.
No, nothing too crazy. Both of these teams notably do have some good interactions with the teams above them. Heatwave, of course, with wins against Calgary and the Bouffalant here, lost to the Boopers. Bouffalant with the loss of the Heatwave, win over the Boopers. So a lot of intermingling here with the top teams. Seasoned, competition, has winning record. Pretty easy 4-5 for us.
And then we get to some complicated territory. I guess we kind of picked out 6-7 here. Clobberus and Chi-Yus are both 4-2 here. So they do stand above the rest of the pack below them at least a little bit, but it sort of feels like both these teams are trending in the wrong direction right now. And once you see the standings, you'll see just how much that could mean. But talk just a little bit about the 6-7.
Yeah, they're doing reasonably well. Some of them have had some easier matches. They're kind of 2-2 against other teams in the hunt. Both of them have played against some of the top teams, with the Clubbers losing to the Boopers in Calgary, the Chi-Yus losing to the Noctowls. They've both won against other teams, who are lower on this list or missed the list. Wobbuffets and Cineroar Sidex. I guess none of those are on the list. Chi-Yus did lose to the Burbs, who are here at number 8. Chi-Yu's kind of over reliant on Dragonite in her mind still. Did mix things up this week, bringing Fire Punch, able to pop a Terra Ghost air balloon. So moving forward there, but still really reliant on Dragonite in all of their earlier matches. Not going up against the threat that is Mareep. Clobberers, they have losses to teams that are doing very well in the Boopers in Calgary and otherwise have won. They just don't really have marquee wins. Again, there's the Wobbuffet there, but I'm doing not great this season. So how much does that matter? But yeah, that's how we end up with them at 6-7.
Well, it could matter a little bit. We had a good amount of discussion about who to put at 8, but Burbs have a lot of interaction, it feels like, with some other very good teams, including some teams above them they have wins over. Shout out to week 1 for the Burbs. Talk to us about the Burbs finishing ahead of the rest of the pack. They're at 8.
Yeah, the Burbs are, a little interesting here. They have wins over teams above them, as mentioned. Wins above the Bouffalant, win above the Chi-Yu. They're at 8. And then, their losses, they have Calgary, which happened this week and certainly happens. But then they also have losses to teams, who kind of are not on this list, and the Silex and the Incineroar. Pretty inconsistent sense why they're so low. But as compared to the other teams that we considered, there's really no one else that has marquee wins. I mean, the Agrons, I guess, have the marquee win against the Noctowls, but they also have a ton of losses against other teams in this area, so not really anything there. Other teams we consider was like the Close Combat Club, not because they have any marquee wins, just because their losses are to the Noctowls, Boopers, Calgary. They've had a dreadful schedule, and it only gets worse with other matchups against teams in this top 8. Really going to have to fight to stay alive, and that toughness of their remaining schedule is really what dissuaded me, at least, from including them in the top 8, even though they're looking reasonably well at 3-3. The other team we considered was, of course, my Wobbuffets. 3-3, but really I just have losses to the top teams. I played the Bouffalant, Noctowls, Clobberers, lost to all of them. Have wins over teams that missed the list, but with no notable wins, it was kind of easy to slide myself out and slide the Burbs on.
Yeah, a lot of interesting back and forth here. Again, Burbs very inconsistent there. You without any marquee wins to stand out. The core club, oh man, their schedule was absolutely brutal. And again, shout out Agrons for getting a nice win there too. But why are we mentioning so many teams for the list? You're going to see in just a moment here. Let's take a look at the standings. Yeah, you do see 13 of the 18 teams listed. Again, remember that our playoff schedule is based off of the 8 seed, and whoever has the same record as the 8 seed also gets into the play-in round. And as of right now, that would be 13 teams, which is just kind of crazy there. A 5-1 team would have to play a play-in game, which is, wow, insane there. Also of note, because the number 9 team is 3-3, their best record they can achieve is 5-3. That means they cannot pass up the 5-win team. So congrats to their 5-1 teams, the Noctowls, Heatwave, Boopers, and Calgary Corviknights, all of whom have clinched a playoff spot as of this week. Congrats to them for making it in. And that continues to call into question, what is the playoff situation going to look like? Are there going to be enough teams that qualify with 5 wins to force out the rest, or do we think maybe 4-4 is going to sneak in there? And if there is only one other team on here, the Boulder Boulders at 2-4, who could potentially sneak in. There's a lot to go over here, Steve, but I'll let you take whatever direction you feel like taking right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on the playoff angle here. It is very hard to tell. There's been a lot of games that we think are going to go one way and don't. So it's very hard to predict the future and look at this and think, oh, that team, 5-3 is going to be what you need, or 4-4. I really am going to want to wait at least one more week, get to week 7, see what those standings look like. I feel a whole lot better about trying to predict 1 week of games and figure out how I feel about needing 5-3 versus 4-4 at that point. Myself being at 3-3, kind of hope 4-4 is enough. That makes it a whole lot easier for myself to get in. But as mentioned, it is going to be rough, and 5-3 might be the case. It just depends how the cards fall in the end. Taking another look at the standings here, there, really like to point out the differential difference, especially between the 5-1 teams that all have clinched. Notice that plus 16, 15, 14, 13, all right next to each other there. The other records, are a little more spaced out, especially the 3-3s going from +8 to -7. But some of these packs, tight packs, especially up at the top, really going to be interesting, and that differential could be key if we get to a situation where 14, 13, or even 10, 11 teams make the playoffs. That could be the difference between needing to play that play-in game and not.
And those teams that do barely make it in, they're going to be hot for sure. I suppose also of note, not that many teams within their own records playing each other here for those crucial times. My Bouffalant do play the Clobbers, and on the 3-3s, I believe it's only the Agrons and Burbs that play each other to guarantee anything there, which is pretty tough. Otherwise, who knows? As you said, there have been so many matches that have gone different ways than we expected, and oh boy, this could be a total blast to take a look at. Speaking of, let's take a peek at the MVP race. Getting a little more heated, actually, as 4 of the top 5 here took the week off. Basically, D-Knight, Ogrepond, Gouging Fire, Excalibur, not really doing much of anything, but you already know Enamorous shooting up the list, going from 8 KOs up to 14 in just 1 week. A lot of fun stuff here, and actually got a bit of a gap now between 10 and 11, 9 KOs, and missing the list. The next one is 7. What do you want to talk about here, Steve?
I think there are some key highlights to bring up is that the Wooper Boopers, Enamorous, and Excalibur both making the list, even top 5. Also mentioned, of course, the Noctowls, Regieleki, and Greninja both making the list. These top coaches here having multiple key mons that are certainly very much helping them I think, very helpful. A lot of the other mons here, of course, are from other teams we've talked about, but they're kind of the one standout mon instead of having that second.
Absolutely. Shout out to Enamorous getting the Stellar Terra added to it. That has been a huge boon for the Boopers. They're already doing so well. That's all really to talk about for week 6. So we have to go on to the week 7 schedule. Oh man, there with so many teams in contention, Steve. There are so many different games to talk about. Take it whichever direction you'd like here as well.
Well, I guess the first one I'll talk about is the Buffalo Bouffalant versus Corviknight Clobbers. We got 2 teams that were very close in the rankings, are 5 and 6, both at 4 and 2, I believe. So a very important match here. One of them gets up to guarantee their spot at least 5 and 3. One of them gets to fall down and hope for a week 8 win, or that 4 and 4 ends up making it and they just can fall in. Very important matchup there. Another one I'll point out is, now that we've put the Boopers on number 1, let's see if there's a little bit of a building pressure here. The Burbs and Boopers. We've mentioned the Burbs have had a very inconsistent season so far. Big wins over teams ranked above them, but losses to teams below them. Let's see if that continues with a win over the Boopers this week. What matches are catching your eye?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go up to you and the Chill and Chi-Yus. I think is a big one. Chi-Yus, we're kind of been on fraud watch for a little bit here, a couple weeks in a row without D-Knight being able to put in the work, and they've been slipping a little bit. With their only win in the last 3 weeks coming against, as you said, the All-Star Suncurrent and Mareep. And you're still trying to get your footing there a little bit too, try and get some wins that maybe matter a little bit more and maybe differentiate yourself from the rest of the teams around you. That could definitely be one way to do that. I guess we could point out a few others. I'll go with the Terrifier Heatwave and the Close Combat Club. There, you already mentioned Close Combat Club with an absolutely brutal schedule throughout the season, just ahead of a couple of our other teams. You and I know have brutal ends to our schedule as well, but the Close Combat Club been facing it all season. Still need to get a big win though if they do want to make it over there. You mentioned they could end up being one of our 8 best teams, but they could also finish 3 and 5, and that would be absolutely tragic to see from them. So if they're playing well, they're going to need to find a big win. Terrifier Heatwave might be the answer there, but boy, if the Heatwave looked good too, and I don't want to be overlooking them either. So that's going to do it for week 6. We have, of course, one more thing to do. It's going to be our Curse Wheel. Steve, did not work out particularly well last week. I thought Sunkern could have pulled it out there, but did not happen.
Yeah, I had faith in the curse, but maybe and hopefully it's pulling over to this week, and I'll get a big win because of the curse.
Or maybe it's just building up. We saw that happen before with the Incineroar, where it kind of doubled up on them. I wonder what's going to happen here. And would you believe it, Steve? We've got number 7 that is being
Oh,
cursed, and I believe that.
that is the
Oh
Chillin'
my.
Chi-Yus.
Oh boy, yeah. Unfortunately, you can't dodge the curse for very long. Even the Boopers, who were the only ones to escape the curse, otherwise had only a 1-0 that week and did end up falling by Bouffalant a little bit later. So, bad news for the Chill and Cheese. Maybe the curse wheel was just winding up a little bit before going for this gut punch. That's going to do it from us for week 6 recap and power rankings. Join us next time. Remember, we only have 2 weeks left, so we're coming up to playoffs very shortly. The race is intense with all these 3-3 teams, and maybe even some 4-2 teams missing. Ooh, we'll see what happens next week. We'll see you back here.